produce 190,000 barrels of crude oil per day at peak. The 1,443-kilometer East African crude oil pipeline project will transport the produced crude oil to access the international market via the Tanga port in Tanzania. The Uganda refinery project will process up to 60,000 barrels of oil per day to provide petroleum products to the Ugandan market and its immediate neighbors. Additional exploration work is ongoing in the Kanyotaba and Ngasa areas in the Albertine Graben. For more information, visit www.pau.go.ug. Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey. The Oil and Gas Moment, brought to you by Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey. The development and commercialization of Uganda's oil and gas resources is being undertaken through 4 flagship projects, which will bring in investment of $15 billion into the economy. The Kingfisher project will produce 40,000 barrels of crude oil per day at peak. The Tilenga project will produce 190,000 barrels of crude oil per day at peak. The 1,443-kilometer East African crude oil pipeline project will transport the produced crude oil to access the international market via the Tanga port in Tanzania. The Uganda refinery project will process up to 60,000 barrels of oil per day to provide petroleum products to the Ugandan market and its immediate neighbors. Additional exploration work is ongoing in the Kanyotaba and Ngasa areas in the Albertine Graben. For more information, visit www.pau.go.ug. Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey. The Oil and Gas Moment, brought to you by Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey. Uganda's oil and gas resources are located within pristine environments. The oil and gas activities are benchmarked on Uganda's updated environment legislation and on the international best practice standards in order to continuously ensure coexistence between the oil activities and Uganda's rich biodiversity. This is being achieved using improved technology to reduce environmental footprint, mapping of sensitive ecological features for avoidance, improving standards of waste management and development and implementation of tools for environment management. These include the Albertine Graben Environment Monitoring Plan, Strategic Environmental Assessment, various environmental sensitivity atlases, and the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, among others. For more information, visit www.pau.go.ug. Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey.
Mabara gange katusabe Richard.
Amabara gange ni nyako nyaimeruda ndi mwikazi wa Mukabara.
Ourselves. Thank you. You have before you Mr. Jean Baptiste Havugimana, I'm Director of Productive Sectors at East African Community Secretariat, and I'm a member of the steering committee for this whole conference, and co-chair of that same steering committee to the host Uganda. So I was given to moderate this session. This is my second session in a series in this particular conference, and I hope we are going to do it professionally, manage time nicely, and I'm talking to the presenters who are here. I'm going to check whether they are all here, and those who are not here now, we skip them, because if you were to present and you are not in this room at this particular time, it means you are not serious with the assignment you have been given. So, we are going to skip those ones. So let me say, just recognize Mr. John Jerry Sebigaju. He's here. You can rise. This is the first presenter. Actually, let me say we have a presentation under three different categories. The first category is capacity building and training programs at all levels of the value chain of the oil industry. And this is where we have Mr. John Jerry Sebigaju and then Ms. Rose Naliaka Nongesa. Rose, thank you very much. And the second component category is farming partnership and multi-client studies, feasibility studies, extraction studies, exploration studies, all those in the upstream. How can people manage to partner rather than going it as alone, single-handed, so that we improve. There is efficiency, and there is also synergy, creation of synergies and efficiency, and that actually leads to lower costs. And this is what we have been talking about: energy transition from the conventional that we know, oil, gas, and charcoal, and coal, to renewable energy and all the renewables. So lowering the cost. And here we have the three presenters. I just want to identify them. Dr. Iftikhar Ahmad. Is Ahmad here? If Ahmad is not here, then we are skipping it. Him. Then Mr. Abiud Masinde. Is Masinde around? And then Mr. Boniface Okot. Is Boniface Okot here around? Oh, then this component, why are people protesting now and running away from it? We will find out maybe the next few minutes. The third component is the financing for petroleum projects. And here, it's for us to have a bit of idea on how financing of oil industry projects have been financed, what are the types that we have, the major financing facilities and the mechanisms that are there to be tapped into, and how can the region do that. So we will have a presentation by Mr. Peter Ongoni. I know Peter Ongoni, I saw him, he's here. And that's really will be all. I will come again at some point for the second topic, but if we don't find people there, we will skip it. And it will make us actually make up time and spend much time to those topics where we have people here. Let me say, as a point of introduction, that all these people that we'll be presenting, at least the three who are here with us, they have their bios, their biographies already in the book. And we have the one of John Jerry Sebigu on page 40. So I will take you there, then you can check. We have the one of Rose Naliaka Nyongesa on page 52, and the one of Peter on page 21. So let us not go into that. If you want to check their bios, you can go to those pages and get to know them. But we also know them as they present. So moving quickly to the first category of a presentation, the one of capacity building and training programs. I think before I call Mr. John Jerry Sebigaju to come and kickstart the presentation process, skills, capacity, ability, know-how on how to use technologies in this industry are needed. In whatever we are saying, if we don't have a capacity from within the East African community, from within Uganda, from within Tanzania and Kenya, that will be able to work together with the hired capacity expert from international community, and then ensure takeover at some stage of the process in future, and then we would be missing it, and we will be missing the point. So capacity is very key, skills are very key, know-how and technology transfer is something that is needed. We are going to hear about all those issues from the presentation of those two, and allow me at this particular time call upon Mr. John Sebigaju to come and give us his presentation. And before you come in, John, I need to warn you, we will manage time. We manage time very efficiently and ensure that you follow the guidelines, be straight to the point, and help us understand, get what we want to get from you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, you are most welcome to this session. As the moderator has said, I will be talking about capacity building, a case for the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. I will specifically be talking about those initiatives under capacity building that we've been able to undertake to enable the authority to build capacity of its staff and staff from other MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies with whom we work to monitor and regulate the oil and gas sector in Uganda. Okay, the presentation outline, as it comes on, I'll have a brief introduction. I'll not spend much time speaking about the introduction because most of the things have been said in the presentations that we've had from day one in Victoria, in the main boardroom. But I'll then move to the interventions that we've undertaken to try and build capacity of our citizens. I'll talk about the results, what we'll see after implementing the capacity building initiatives, and then I'll conclude. As an introduction, we have learned now already from the previous speakers that when we discovered oil in 2006, the commercially viable deposits of oil in 2006, Uganda went into formulating the relevant laws and policies to enable us monitor and regulate the sector. These are very important because they also laid the foundation for any capacity building interventions that we were to undertake to support the sector. As a result of these laws or policies, we saw the formulation of the PAU. And these laws gave the PAU a huge mandate to monitor and regulate the oil and gas sector to create lasting value for society, but also to make Uganda a sound investment destination. This, of course, means a lot. And in the beginning, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda did not have the required numbers of staff or employees to do this work. So we had to start off by recruiting a sizable number of employees who would go into the different directorates that we have in the authority to do the work. As we stand today, we have about 199 staff, and we are still growing as an institution. So to reach this number, to be able to reach all the aspects that we need, be it environment, production, exploration, we've had to do a lot of capacity building, because sometimes we get people fresh from the universities, get them into the authority, but as one of the speakers was saying, they come to work without the required experience or skills. So here, we then have to go into the different capacity building interventions that we need to put them to the required levels to be able to support the authority to undertake its mandate. So I'll now take off some time to speak about the interventions that we've undertaken. To start with, as I said, the country was blessed to start with formulating the laws. And this was very critical, because as we were formulating the laws, one of the critical aspects, if you were to go into implementing any capacity building interventions, is providing the required resources. I know in most of the institutions that you work, if you identify the training needs amongst your staff, you'll need a resource envelope to be able to facilitate the training programs that you have identified. So as an authority, we were blessed that this component of the budget was put in the policies, and the IOCs, the international oil companies, were required to provide resources to facilitate training. So every year, the oil companies provide a resource envelope which we use to provide scholarships to personnel from government entities, those that are actually involved in implementing different programs in the sector, to go and pursue particular courses. And here we are looking at courses that benefit or have a role to play in the sector. For example, I might be talking, to be specific, I can be talking about people who work, say for example, with the environment regulator, the National Environment Management Authority. I'm talking about people who work in the Revenue Authority, to address aspects to do with tax, to address aspects to do with how we are managing the environment, to address aspects to do with how the laws are implemented and formed. So this is an important aspect, and I think the other countries might have it as a takeaway if they don't have it in their respective regulations. You must provide a basis for which funds for these programs are to be generated. So we are blessed since 2018. We've had this resource. Each year we spend between $700,000 to $1.5 million US on capacity building interventions for the different entities. And secondly, our employees and employees from those other MDAs have been supported to undertake international certification programs, and also to undertake master's programs, you realize that for the master's programs, as I said, the resource envelope, talked about the resource envelope, these are programs that require the employees to go to institutions that have built a record of offering knowledge and skills in the oil and gas sector. I'm talking about institutions in Europe, like University of Aberdeen, Dundee, where you'll find the required skills. There are, of course, others which are available within Africa, but majority of those we've sponsored have gone to some of the best institutions to be able to acquire the standard skills that are required to monitor and regulate the sector. So this is also key, and it has helped our staff and the staff in those other entities to hone their skills to be able to regulate the sector. Thirdly, most of our staff have been supported to subscribe to relevant international bodies where they can, on a regular basis, get information or attain skills by being members of this association. Here, I'm talking about institutions like the Society of Petroleum Engineers, American Association of Petroleum Geologists. When the staff subscribe to these bodies, they are able to understand which standards are required to monitor and regulate the sector. So this is also key to the other countries that are in this sector. This is one of the areas where you can ably build capacity of your staff by allowing them to regularly get access to information on standards in the sector. Then we also undertake benchmarking exercises, as one of the presenters was talking in the boardroom yesterday. I mean, in the main boardroom yesterday. We've benefited as a nation a lot from benchmarking from countries that have been there before. They talked about Norway. We've benchmarked a lot with Norway. They've helped us a lot to be able to obtain information on the sector. We've also benchmarked a lot with Tanzania, the regulator in Tanzania, EURA, and there is vital information that you get when you benchmark, because you are able to get standards, you are able to see how those who developed earlier have done it before, so that you avoid some of the pitfalls that they could have gotten into. Our staff continue to undertake professional learning and development on a personal basis, but also we encourage them to give learning sessions to colleagues who are here, who have not gotten the chance maybe to go to Aberdeen, or who have not gotten the chance to go to Norway. When they come back, we have those sessions in the different directorates for them to interact with colleagues and give them sessions on how things are done in the other parts. We've also we've also supported internship and graduate training programs. We were able to see interns in the boardroom yesterday. We have an internship program at the PAU where we receive students on an annual basis from the different universities here, those who are involved in undertaking study programs in the oil and gas sector, and we attach them to the different directorates. They do their internships in different areas: environment, oil and gas production, exploration, legal and regulatory frameworks, so that by the time they come out of the university, they have a thorough understanding and experience of how this sector operates. So it is important also, and it helps the students who are fresh from the university to get a feel of what the sector is. And the ones who are in university today are blessed because the sector is now operational here. 10 years ago, we were not experiencing oil here because the sector was not being developed. But those who are in the university today have that opportunity even to go to the Albertine to see the rigs. What does a physical rig look like? What does the well pad look like? How are the laws formulated? And they are able to get that experience. So what do we see as some of the benefits or results? We've been able to create a pool of personnel from the different agencies. As I said, we train government personnel from different agencies. So far, we have a total of about 52 government personnel who have done individual study programs in these different universities. There is also a group of about 50 to 100 personnel from different entities who have attended group trainings, and I think this is a sizable number. If, say, for example, the authority is going to do an activity to do with the environment or production, we can pick on a person from the National Environment Management Authority because we know we've trained people there. So we don't have to struggle alone with the regulation, but we can also pick people from other sectors. So this is very good, and it helps to strengthen linkages between government entities in such a way that if we have to look at a particular sector, at a particular aspect of the chain, of the oil and gas chain, that other entity will give us the expertise to complement our efforts as a regulator. So that helps building the linkages. It has also promoted efficient management of the resource to the benefit of the country, because we see that the different players are all involved, right from collecting taxes, setting the laws. So in so doing, it is creating value to the society. These capacity building initiatives have also helped to create employment opportunities in the oil and gas sector, and to build the capacity of Ugandans to offer services to the sector. As I conclude, the PAO has supported various training programs for its staff and Ugandans from 15 government entities. And however, the work to build the capacity of Ugandans is still on. We still need critical manpower in the areas of production, because that is where we are going now. If we look, say, for example, at the pipeline, we are developing a high-tech pipeline. We still need skilled personnel to help handle these areas. We still need a lot of effort to do research. And right now, as I speak, we are running an attachment program for some of our staff to try and get some of the skills that we require. That is the end of my presentation. I thank you.
Join me once again to give a round of applause to Jerry for having utilized the time efficiently. That is one. Second, for a brilliant presentation. I'm not going to comment on right now. I wish to call upon the other presenter. I hope you have jotted down some notes and questions, because we want to have a time for questions. That's the most important. So I will make my comments at once the other one has finished. So let me call upon Rose to come, Rose Naliaka Nongesa, and she will be presenting on need for capacity building and training programs in petroleum sector with the East Africa. It was Uganda, this is East Africa. Thank you very much. Let us applaud her as she comes, she joins the podium.
Good after lunch, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I know you've had a nice lunch, so you're welcome. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. My presentation today is about need for capacity building and training programs in petroleum sector within East Africa. I said within East Africa because, as you have heard from my the previous presenter, he has also mentioned something like we are still doing the studies, we are still building the capacity of our staff, but we are lacking somewhere. So there's that need in East Africa as at large. When we mention of Kenya, when we mention of Uganda, when we mention of Tanzania, we are lacking somewhere in capacity building. And just as an overview, we can see that capacity building being a dynamic process, it enables individuals and mainly agencies to develop their capacity, to develop their technical capabilities as they work. And we can also see that it enhances a wide range of technical and business and soft skills in our staffs. So we really need it. And I just set some objectives of my study to say that I wanted to work on this thing so that we can see how to spearhead the establishment and strengthening of capacity building and establishment and strengthening of capacity building in our regions, and also to encourage the stakeholders in petroleum industry to manage oil and gas sector in accordance with the universal standards and best practices of the oil development through capacity building. Also, we can see to promote the understanding of oil and gas value chain and opportunities for employing young graduates and exploration in the exploration and processing activity through capacity building. So those were the objectives of my study. And I had some findings, and I could say that in East Africa at large, we are facing serious capacity building and training challenges. We can see that most of the funds, as it is, are mainly dedicated for other things like developing new technologies and doing explorations, but capacity building is lacking behind. The budget for capacity building is considered overhead most of the times. It's not given that strength, that energy in our region. And most of the workforce in the sector, I found out that most of the workforce is of the old generation. The new generation, the young people in the industry don't have that capability so much that we can rely on them. And so most of them are approaching retirement. Those that have the know-how, have the knowledge and the skills are almost exiting. And we might say that they may take decades of their knowledge and expertise with them as they live. And so there is there are few, as we could see, the young skilled workers joining the industry are few. So we want to see how we can have more people interested in the field, how we can let the young graduates from schools also joining the industry. Are they getting enough knowledge? Are they getting what they need for them to work or to help to improve our industry? Yeah, and on that I can see, I thought of looking at the business opportunities for the private sector in the capacity building and training programs at large. We can see that we have opportunities in oil and gas capacity building and training institutions. Most of the time we have seen that we send our people away. We are talking of East Africa. We as Uganda, we as Tanzania, do we have any institution within us that can offer this capacity? Most of the time we have been going away in the US, but we have opportunities. We have the chance where we can ask the investors to come in our localities to build the institutions where we can have the source of information at our disposal, other than waiting for us to go once in a while in abroad to seek for capacity building. And so I thought that we have this chance for the private sector. Like, I can use my case for Kenya, where we have, it has sometimes been used largely for East Africa, the Morentat Institute, which is a parastatal in our country. But it's not offering enough. It's not offering all the needs that we have, all the requirements we have for capacity building. How about, where are the private sectors? Where are they? So that they can also chip in, they can provide the need that we have as a country, as a region. I think you get me in that. And that as service, we can have the oil and gas research institutions. We can have them being offered by the private sectors. They can come up with such research institutions where they can be contracted maybe to do the study for us to find out there are graduates getting out there. How many are they? How many do we need in our sector? So we need such institutions for provision of such services. And also we need the services for printing and supply of gas and oil and gas learning materials. We have such opportunities for the private sector. Can they come in? Are our institutions ready to let this private sector offer such services for us? And on policy implications, that is from the government, we need a conducive government policy environment. It's very necessary for the process of technology capacity building to thrive through, without hindrances, without putting many laws here and there that puts a barrier where, when this private sector wants to come up, are they going to do it freely, or they are going to do under some conditions that will not be conducive for them? And so the policy for the technological capacity building should be multi-sectorial, that involve universities, research institutions, and other stakeholders in the industry. So our governments, we really need a conducive environment, the policy that can be conducive, that can accommodate the investors, that can accommodate someone who will want to provide the services in a private, as a private sector. Yeah, so in conclusion and my recommendations, I can see that we should give a priority to oil and gas companies. You should give a priority to oil and gas companies, and other stakeholders should be done regularly to create a competent workforce. We should do capacity building on a regular basis, so that in our institutions or our working places, we equip our employees, we equip them regularly. You can imagine that, you can see that most of the time you are employing new employees, but the people who are ahead, who have the knowledge, yes, they have it yet, but how about these new ones? Are we doing it continuously? Are you doing it regularly? So we need it regularly as a region. And also, for us to have a sufficient development of workforce and capabilities to make the best use of our valuable experiences and the knowledge, it is of importance for us to formulate a sustainable plan to develop, to do talent development and succession planning. We can see that those of us, those who are retiring, can we do succession development? Can we do succession planning, so that they can equip those who have been employed recently, those who are young, who don't have the experience yet, before they exit? Can we do the succession planning as institutions? And also we can do on-job learning, mentoring schemes, and establishment of in-house training centers. For us as an institution, we can have an in-house training center, so that we can equip our people every time, that they can get the knowledge that they need continuously. Yeah. And on my parting shot, it's that let's make East Africa a competent oil and gas producer through trainings and capacity building of the workforce. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Rose. Another round of applause to Rose. And what I'm happy of is they are following the guidelines. Time efficiency, straight to the point presentations. I think we are not expecting so many questions from the audience, Rose and Jerry. So allow me, before we allow the audience to ask questions, to recognize newcomers. I think since we started the presentations, there are many people who came in. The conference hall is full. They even brought in new chairs. And I wish to really recognize you and welcome you all in the conference room once again. And allow me also to mention that we have some dignitaries in this room, including representatives of government, including people in uniform, but today in a civilian attire, including also the council to the community here of the East African community, who is here present with us. So I needed to mention those people. Again, we have 10 minutes for questions. I'm going to make just a comment for just 2 minutes. Then 8 minutes we give them to the audience. Capacity building for Uganda, I think Jerry, John took us through everything that they have did, all the interventions that were meant to ensure there is capacity as Uganda starts the journey of oil industry, and ensuring that there is ability, there is enough ability, there is skills, there is know-how, and also there is, perfect institutional arrangement necessary to ensure that take that process through to where we are now. So that's the presentation of John Jerry, and I know for sure what I have ever noted, you have noted, and we ask questions. And we have just followed the presentation by Rose. I think Rose took the presentation of John to the regional level, trying to regionalize whatever Uganda has done and ensure that if we take it to regional level and what is missing, what is lacking, that we can include, so that at the regional level we are, we are comfortable enough whether in Kenya, whether in Uganda, and in those other countries like Burundi and Rwanda, where they also have very new explorations going on, and South Sudan, that is very actually experienced the country now in the East African community when it comes to the oil industry. And for us, this is a case for the business, for the private sector. Capacity building. The private sector should take it up and ensure that that capacity building is there, not waiting for the government to look for grants so that they can train people. Yes, we have to look for grants, but the private sector can play its role if they take the drive and lead the process, ensure that the capacity building in this sector is well done. Let me stop here and then come to the audience. Allow me to ask the audience. I like the women now. There's two. Okay, let us be straight to the point. Address the question to someone. Be straight to the point. Address the question to either Rose or John. Or if you find that there is a question to address to me, there is no problem. You feel free to do it. So, and I will take 2 questions, No, let me take 4. I think you can manage. Thank you very much. So I already have 4 or 5. Okay, 5. 2 ladies here, 2 men, another gentleman, or a lady. Okay. Thank you very much. Let us start by the lady here in the front. Please, John and Rose, write carefully the questions. I want to repeat them for you.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, presenters.
Oh, I wish to call upon John and Rose to come to the podium so that you can see the people who are asking you questions right in the face.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, John and Rose, for your excellent presentations. It's a question that will be followed by a comment. I just wanted to find out from both of you, because you're coming from public sector, as it were, whether you have directories of capacity building institutions within your different countries, even as we talk about the same being perhaps a consideration to be made in the East African community. Why do I say that? I say that because Rose has pointed out that in Kenya there is only one public Morindanti Institute of Oil and Gas, which is run by Kenya Pipeline Company, that carries out capacity building for the oil and gas sector, which is not the case because I work for my name is Wanjiko Manyara. I work for the Petroleum Institute of East Africa, which is the professional oil and gas industry association in the region. We were there even before oil was struck, since 1999. And what we've done continuously as a professional industry association, because one of the mandate is to professionalize persons within the sector in all cadres of business, whether you're employed, whether you're working as a service provider, whether you're a service station attendant, whether you're a driver of petroleum tankers, with skills and competencies that they will need throughout their life within this different segments in the oil and gas sector. And we have skills upgrading courses and so on and so forth. And with the finding of oil, we actually developed, as private sector, a curriculum for geoscience, a diploma, actually a certificate and a diploma. As private sector, it then went through the national accreditation as required for post-secondary school learning. And while we didn't have what you can call a typical post-secondary school institution, because we're an oil and gas professional industry association, we did have graduates in the first 3 years for the geoscience certificate in geoscience, and also for another diploma in petroleum management. Those curriculums have now been taken over by the post-secondary school typical TVET colleges. So we have the National Polytechnics in Eldoret, we have polytechnics, and even the universities who have then develop curriculum for degrees. So just back to the question, do we have a directory? Because then the directory will enable the countries to know what's available within country by both public and private sector institutions, but also within the region, so that we can know which institutions are offering certain skills and competencies, so that we save money instead of going abroad for courses that are available locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We appreciate the presenters. My question, or I'm curious to know whether, as far as sustainable capacity building is concerned, whether Uganda, this is directed to Jerry and partly to Rose, probably Rose could tell us how they're doing it the other side. So I would like to know whether there are, the country has appreciated the role of partnerships, or call them collaborations with learning institutions, so that we nurture the spirit of this whole idea of oils and discovery from the lower levels of education. Say we could introduce it at high school or those universities, so that people know, students know, before we wait for them to come out of university and now we are spending whatever dollars on them to go abroad. Have we thought about doing it locally here and introducing the mattering courses on the curriculum, in the education curriculum, so that we are proud of our people? Because you know, when we take them abroad, I feel like the knowledge imparted on them, coming back to apply it here, it will take another cost, either time or whichever way you would want to categorize it. So have you appreciated that to create sustainable capacity building that will lead to socio-economic development in the long run? I'd like to know that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Allow me to be weak and give it to another lady. Thank you. Before I give to men.
Thank you very much. My name is Suraya from National Oil Board, Kenya. And I want to commend the two presenters. I think that was very resourceful. After the discovery of oil, I think East Africa is trying to be the powerhouse of energy. So how can we move in tandem with capacity building? Because donors do not support and fund capacity building. They think it's expensive and it doesn't have immediate tangible results. So I wanted to direct this to the Ugandan presenter. Does Uganda have a policy in place that if you're coming in with your finances and investment to explore, then you have to do this and that in terms of capacity building? I'd be interested. My second question is in the young people who are graduating now. From yesterday, we've had a lot of wisdom from the old generation, senior citizens, on oil gas industry. And I was actually looking and wondering, these old senior citizens are going on retirement. The young people have no interest in oil and gas in the universities. Do we have a deliberate move? Because it has to be deliberate. There has to be an intervention to make sure that our young people have an interest. Because where we are heading to where we came from, before we used to do a lot of marketing. Now we are discovering we need capacity building. But how do we push the young people to embrace and appreciate that this is where we are going to remove poverty from East Africa? As they say, if you think training is expensive, try ignorance. But donors will never fund that, for sure, because they can't see anything they can hold in their hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are starting with men. No, we have a three. Yes, and the other one.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, our two presenters, for the great presentations. I'm Joseph Kobsheshe from the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, and my question goes to Jerry. Could you highlight what are the key areas or disciplines that government has focused its training initiatives or interventions on?
Thank you very much, being straight to the point. And the other one behind you? And then we end with the one in this side. Because that side is very, very much asking so many questions.
Thank you to the presenters. My name is Paul. My question is directed to the both of them. What cross-border initiatives are we putting in place to ensure that capacity building is a regional agenda, especially because we are striving towards a common labor arrangement? And Uganda, for instance, a few years from now will have an influx of people in trade and in oil and gas. So my question then is, how do they transfer these skills when the project's here in Uganda, and how do they transfer them to the regional market?
Thank you. Last question, this side.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentations also. Now, question to Jerry. I was wondering whether there are target numbers for training in the areas that are lacking skills and competence in Uganda, target numbers. Because once we know the target numbers, then the investors can see whether it makes business sense to go there. One also for Rose. Rose, is it necessary to have strategic planning for human resource development to realize the necessary critical mass in the East African community? Or should we just say, okay, we have opportunities, people run, set up institutions, set up schools, and whoever can afford comes in? I'm looking at whether we need to have a strategic plan either at country level, especially at country level, to realize critical masses to meet these competence gaps in the oil and gas sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We seem to have started a bit late, and time is not on our side. We have 6 questions. I will save you from question 4 on the young people and the older generation. That one I will take it up. And also the question on regional agenda in terms of capacity building. That one also I will take it up. And Rose and John, please respond to the remaining questions and be straight to the point, because we still have another session to go, and yet we don't have enough time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the first question that Madam asked whether we have the Directorate for Capacity Building. Direction. Yeah. It was about directorates, huh? Yeah. If you listened, I know you are keen. I mentioned of an example that we have a public institution, but I was mainly spearheading for the private sector involvement in the provision of the capacity building. But then another thing I noted is that the institutions that are available are not, it's like they're not doing enough, because we are finding ourselves most of the time seeking this help from far. Or it's maybe that it could be that the way you have, okay, I'm looking for the way I can put it so that I can say that we are not going to seek this help from far. Is it able for us to sell ourselves around so that we could give this information from our locality? And most of the time, maybe we are dwelling on giving trainings in our universities or colleges, but that little knowledge that I have that is not concerned with exactly what I learned in school, am I getting it from the institutions that are around me? So maybe that could be the case to the reason to why most of us are seeking this capacity building from far. If you can, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Okay. Oh, I thought you were directly for Kenya. Oh, it's okay. Then maybe I can answer the next question. If it's necessary for us to have a strategic human resource planning in our country level, it's very necessary. And so that's where our country policies comes from. When our countries formulate the right policies, then we can do the strategic planning for the human resource in this case, so that before we incorporate our private sectors, we have the laws in place, we have the regulations in place that can also favor and promote what we need in capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll try to answer the questions that have been directed to me. The first one is on whether we have a directory of capacity building institutions, right? Yes, as a country, we work closely with the capacity building institutions, especially to drive the national content agenda. So under our Directorate for Economic and National Content, we profile institutions that can provide capacity to skill our Ugandans to promote the national content agenda. And I'm happy that in our audience, we have one of our board members who is in one of the institutions that is engaged in capacity building. So the institutions are profiled. Then there was a question on how we nurture partnerships with skilling institutions for capacity building, right? So these the how we nurture these partnerships is that we profile the trainings that the institutions are giving to Ugandans all over the country, especially in the Graben, where these institutions go to give skills to, say, youth who are involved in the oil and gas sector, to give programs like agricultural programs to people within the sector. So these institutions are now our partners in promoting the national content agenda. So I want to say that they are our partners in promoting the oil and gas sector, and we work with them to promote that agenda for the benefit of the country. She doesn't seem to be convinced. I don't know if she... The others have not yet answered. Okay, let me move quickly to the next one. There was a question on key areas that government of Uganda has supported in training. As I said in my presentation, through the different trainings that we've supported, we've looked at areas specifically to do with law and policy. How does Uganda as a country formulate the relevant policies? We've looked at areas to do with taxation, especially working with the Uganda Revenue Authority and Office of the Auditor General. We've looked at finance, working with Ministry of Finance. How does finance help us to support the different aspects of the sector? And we've also looked at the environmental aspects, environment being one of the key areas that now we are focusing on to ensure that we are not violating the different aspects of the environment. How do we move in tandem with the incapacity building with the law? Especially, as I said in my presentation, we under the petroleum sharing agreements, our law provides for funds to support capacity building initiatives. So when the law was being formulated, they carefully put a clause where the oil companies are supposed to support capacity building initiatives to transfer knowledge from this sector to the Ugandans. So that is a critical aspect, and I remember I emphasized it in my presentation. I don't know if there's any I have left.
I think that's all. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to these two. And I would request them to rejoin their seats. And then we move to the next component of presentations. You know, we have the three components. We are done with the first one. And I wish to check whether we have presenters for the second presentations on farming in partnerships and multi-client studies. So do we have Dr. Iftak Ahmad? Do we have Mr. Abiud Masinde? Yes, Masinde. And do we have Mr. Boniface Okot? Okay, Boniface Okot and Masinde, they are going to make two presentations, and I think the organizers are saying that the time is up, but let me say they are not being fair to us. because we just started. So, but allow me to call upon Mr. Abiud Masinde to come quickly. Please be straight to the point and go quickly, follow the guidelines. As you can see, time is not on our side. And the interest of time, we have to make sure that all the presenters make their presentations. Mm-hmm.
Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abiud Masinde from the National Oil Corporation of Kenya, and I'm being told to summarize what I have in the shortest time possible, and I'll try my best. I'm going to talk about an integrated effort that has been carried out in National Oil to try and image below subbasalt structures, and highlight this as an exploration opportunity, because we are in the process of looking for a farming partner who can come in and help us move to the next stage. I'm presenting on behalf of all the authors that have been listed there. Right, so in my presentation, I'll give a general location of where the block is, some of the work that we've done in the past decade or so. We will also be looking at some of the highlights, what is it that we've seen in the block, and if you want to partner with us, what are some of the commercial considerations that you are likely to be interested in, and of course I'll make a few conclusions. So the block is within, the 14T highlighted in red on the image on the far left, on your left. That's block 14T, which is operated by National Oil Corporation of Kenya, and is within the East African or the Kenyan Rift System, runs all the way from Lake Bogoria south into Lake Natron, and we border the EAPCE Wembere Basin in Tanzania. So our colleagues in Tanzania will be familiar with that because we share the same geological environment. And basically, just to point out that it is within the East African Rift System, and the Rift System is characteristic of rifting that is followed by volcanic emplacements. And that has been manifested within this Magadi Basin or within the Block 14T. And therefore, we came, that volcanic manifestation hinders proper imaging below it, because of the acoustic challenges of that volcanic layer. It has some challenges, especially when you're talking about seismic imaging. And so the integration and the title of the presentation is to try to use different methods to see that we can de-risk what we initially imaged on seismic as well. So basically in that area, we have the structural context is the north-south aligned with the existing rift, and so you can see all the faults in red. Most of them are north-south in nature. Over the past decade or so, again, as I've mentioned, a lot of work has been done by National Oil in this area. We've done a lot of geological survey. We've done quite a lot, and I would like to draw attention to FTG, which was done in 2012 by Fugro, and that covered almost an entire basin and highlighted areas that we consider to have thick sediments. Later on in 2014 and 2017, we did 2D seismic, as you can see down there, especially the 2017 2D seismic, which we used an explosive source, which had a lot of better penetration relative to vibrosize that we did in 2014. We were able to see certain features below the volcanic formations. However, there are certain areas, especially in the north, that were still a bit problematic. And then that has now affected our strategy in exploration in that block to move towards potential field methods. And you can see as we go further down, there's been a lot of deliberate effort to go into potential fields, magnetotic to be specific, gravity and magnetic survey as well. So between 2021 and 2023, National Oil has been doing a lot of magnetotic surveys. And I can see is an in-house operation, so we have managed to build capacity in terms of human resource, and also we have bought a significant amount of equipment to enable us do that as well on our own. So this just to bring out all the work that has been done in that area, and therefore, so what have we seen so far? So I'm just going straight to some of the potential leads. Allow me to call them lead 1 and lead 2. I'm just going to mention those two in the interest of time. And so from the integrated interpretation or integrated studies, in this case, we're talking about multiphysics studies. So the image on your left, that's seismic, and then there's FTG, which is written there. This one is MT down here, and that's a 3D depth slice from MT imaging as well. So when we imaged through seismic, we were able to highlight horizon A there, and we could confidently call it at the top of volcanics. However, the horizons below it, we didn't have a lot of confidence because we didn't know that area is quite characteristic of volcanics. So we needed other methods to guide us. As you can see, the inset there, we have, and that's an FTG map. That line highlighted in yellow is that seismic line over there. And just west of that line, you will see, or left of that line, you will see that blue section there. That gave us confidence that those are actually sediments. And we are able to highlight them even on MT as highlighted. You can see that. These are sediments occurring. On top of it, we have the volcanics. So this agrees with seismic, and we're able to see that even in 3D as well, that you can see deeper structures which with the low resistivities occurring at almost 5 kilometers or 5,000 meters relating to sediments. So these are different methods helping us to de-risk what we initially thought maybe might not be that interesting, but now we have a lot of confidence, and therefore we have highlighted them as leads. So this lead 1 is a fault block on the western edge, on the western boundary fault, which is quite similar to the Etuko field, which is in the northern part of the country where we have had successful discoveries. Is a fault block system, and we are looking at sandstone and mudstones in that as the lithology, an alternation of sandstones and mudstones. Some analysis, TOC analysis was done in the course of last year, and they gave normal ranges for TOC analysis, and therefore that improved our confidence in that area there. And we're also looking at the reservoir being a sandstone reservoir. So this is one of the leads that we are looking into, and we are looking maybe the next stage we need to try and do a stratigraphic well and see if it confirms with this. If possible, we can do extra 3D seismic to constrain our information a little bit more. So that's just lead 1. I will also take a very short time to talk about lead 2, but what I'm highlighting here is more of using different methods to try and image lead 2. So I'll save the lot of story and say lead 2 is now an anticlinal structure, and we are able to see that on seismic. The image on the left, you can see highlighted, we have the boundary fault highlighted in red, far left, and then we have those minor faults in there. So we are looking at a potential 3-way closure on that image, and we're able to highlight the same. This is a magnetic map, so this is from magnetic survey, and this is from gravity survey. The same anomaly is picked on different methods just to have a lot of confidence, and therefore we are now ready to look at the next step. And again, this one is similar to Ngamia field in the north, and so that has also given us some confidence in what we are doing. So what are some of the commercial considerations? we are saying that the similarity between the block and those ones in areas which have been successful as Lokichar and even the Albertine, the geological similarities are quite encouraging. We have, as you saw in one of the tables, we have quite a lot of data set available for your review. So you can always come in and review with us and have a look at what we have done so far. A proximity to export infrastructure. So you can see where the block is, where it's written Magadi, and you can see we've done some simulations. You can see about less than about 400 kilometers to the proposed Lokichar Lamu pipeline. If not, then the East African crude pipeline that that has been mentioned here is again less than about maybe 400 or so kilometers from that. If we get any feel around that area, it's about 400 or so kilometers to the East African crude pipeline. Again, there's a rail line that connects that area to the Mombasa port. So these are all infrastructure, export infrastructure that we can take advantage of. We project a moderate development cost per barrel, and this is, we are basing on what we have in Lokichar analogs. We being an NOC, we are looking at possible favorable physical terms and potential waivers as well. In conclusion, so National Oil is looking for a partner to come and partner with us to move to the next phase. As you can see, these leads that we've managed to highlight. And please, we encourage you to come and have a conversation with us, or you can also advise us on what we can do so that we can move on to the next phase. And then also want to take this opportunity to highlight that based on the challenges that we've encountered on the volcanics, we've managed to develop our specialty in de-risking geologically complex fields. So that is for volcanic fields or even salt-related fields, we can use a potential field method, specifically MT, to try and de-risk that. And finally, the collaborative research between Kenya and Tanzania. As you can see, we are bordering Eyasi Wembere Basin in the south, and therefore, if we can have an exchange of ideas, we will all benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masinde. Sorry for making you rush, but I would request the next presenter to even cut the time into two by half, so that we can go to the last one and then wind up, because it seems there is another pressuring program that is there that we'll be taking at Resort Munyonyo, and we all need to be part of it. Thank you very much. Allow me to call Mr. Boniface Okot to come. Please cut time by half. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I've been requested to be as brief as I can, and I promise to be very brief. I'm not going to go into a lot of stories. In fact, when I was preparing for this presentation, my first warning was that what you're talking is business, and the people you're talking to possibly know everything about it. My presentation is on partnerships in the oil and gas sector. I want to look at the region and how the region can deal with how the parties in the sector can deal among themselves. Because from the heading of the presentation is farm out, stroke farming partnerships. Simply, I think that is just English. It's basically how I can get in and how someone in can get out in their positions. Can you just submit some time? Pardon? Okay. This and this, okay. Okay, so basically, briefly, that's what I had intended to discuss in this presentation. Maybe to be point straight to the point, the industry becomes of importance or of serious concern when we actually discover the oil. So the post-exploration activities are the ones that actually attract a lot of interest. And usually, more often than not, because of the characteristics of this industry, a lot of investment involved, a number of years involved to discover and actually bring that oil out of the ground and actually sell it. It becomes almost impossible for one person to do it alone. It's almost goes without saying that there's always someone who is going to need to bring into the industry, and maybe for some reason or the other you have to exit. Now what I'm dealing with is usually there are conflicts that arise at that stage between the person actually who is leaving or the person who is coming in, and actually the host government, because they're the owners of the oil. And I think I tried to bring that out in my, because I want to just skip this part. I go into the serious issue that may actually arise. Okay, the emerging issues, because remember we said the companies come here for business. We are the owners of the resources, and we welcome them because we want to get something out of them in terms of the tax revenues. More often than not, there are issues that arise with the host government in terms of tax dispute. There's a lot of capital gain tax that is usually realized, and I think Uganda, as one of the partner states, has been at this before. We've had a number of disputes, especially upon farm in and farm out between some of the players in the sectors. So we need to find ways of dealing with it, not just as Uganda, but as a region, because in the morning, I think the conference was how we can move forward as a region. Okay, we also see the disputes that actually arise between the persons themselves, okay, because contracts usually, when business is either going bad or going good, there's usually disputes. So among the parties, there's actually a lot of dispute that usually comes up. Then we have an item of conversion of an item of capital into revenue, because your lawyers and your accountant will tell you that the license that you actually have is your capital. In essence, we don't realize revenues or taxes from them. And yet, if you seek to exit before actually the time of maturity arises, that means you, in essence, converting that capital into revenue, and yet you don't want to pay that taxes. So I think briefly, those are some of the issues that arise as between the parties and the host government. And I think as a region, we need to look at best practices for us to deal with this. What should the government sit down and think about? One of them is need to establish a regional industries-led partnership of the players in the industries, the host government, the licensees, the contractors, the communities, and actually people involved in the delivery and distribution chain. I was highlighting here that where we are here could be one of the first steps for us to getting there. If we can make this an institution that has a number of interested parties and shareholders, or people who actually, if you get it into a vehicle that has stakeholders, then if I want to get out, then I can actually only get out from the people who are members of that partnership. That means in that partnership, I propose that we create preemptive rights in the licenses in the industry. That means if I want to get out, the first person I should look at is the person that has been operating in the industry in the region here, because they have tested the industry, we possibly have tested their activeness or interest in the industry, so that can reduce the level of dispute that I'd thought I would discuss more. Then two, the members, sorry, I said there's usually disputes, right? And the dispute, how it's resolved, as a lawyer, I will tell you that if I disagree with you, for me to resolve that dispute within the traditional court system, I won't be there in Uganda for not less than 7 years. Now, 7 years could be a factor or could be a serious timeline in us realizing our oil and gas potentials. The oil and gas industry in Uganda, all our oil was approved or discovered in 2006. The first target was that to have the oil out of the ground and doing the trade by 2020. We're in 2023, now we're projecting the next 2025. Now, along the way, among the key players upon that exit of the person that are actually given the license, there's been a serious dispute. I think they were in court for not less than 4 years. I think that is a serious factor. We need to look for a mechanism of dispute resolution. We have the East African Court, but that East African Court has a jurisdiction that doesn't touch into matters of contracts between the parties. How about we think about a center of arbitration that deals in dispute in oil and gas in the region with a seat in the region here. I believe that way we get into a quicker way of resolving this dispute and go to the next level. Someone talked about capacity building. I'm relatively a young lawyer. I just finished law school recently, but I can confirm that not so many people can sit down and advise you on an oil and gas contract. Maybe if we work on the capacity building, then we can have a boniface that can actually advise not just the oil and gas companies that are coming into the countries or into the region, but also the host government in contracting better. By way of conclusion, because he's reminding me that I don't have a lot of time, by way of conclusion, I think this region has a lot of potential in as far as this industry is concerned. So we need to give the confidence to the persons that want to invest here by assuring them that you can disagree, but you can disagree as human, and we get out of this and still move and you realize the money that you're looking for from this country and us governments actually benefiting. Thank you so much. I was surprised.
Thank you very much, Okot. I think he did it. He promised to cut it short, and he did it. Now, the last component, we only have one individual. I think we need to give him a chance to come to talk to us. It is a matter that is very important to everyone. Everything that we talked about needs financing. And this is the point that Mr. Boniface, no, Mr. Ongori is going to make. And again, please cut it short. If you can make a half of what Okot has used, that will help us. And then I will come in later. You will bear with me. I will not allow for questions, but I will make a concluding comments that will allow everyone to have a takeaway. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think after all, I don't have much to say. And actually, I'm going to make it as short as possible. So, yeah, my presentation actually is all about the structures, financing options, and risk associated with the oil and gas industry. And the outline, my outline is actually to look into the objectives, the methodology, policy implications, scope, industry overview, financing options, risks associated with the oil and gas industry, and the sources of financing. But now, I think for the interest of time, let me go direct to the industry overview. Hello? Oh, thank you. My God, just come and help. think there's a challenge. There is a technological challenge here. Yeah, sure. Can you stand here and press?
Just stay there.
Stay there, yeah. Stay there. Just stay there.
Stay there.
Yeah.
Are you moving? He's hitting one more time.
Sure. Yeah, just let's go to direct to the industry overview.
Is that okay?
Let's move on. Yeah, this is actually what I wanted us to share, because if we understand what happens here, then you understand the industry, then you'll be able to know where to put your money. And I think I'm speaking to people who has enough knowledge in this room, and maybe they know more than I know, because I'm speaking from the legal point of view. They might be speaking on it from the financial point of view. But at the end of the day, there is that convergence. So down there we have the exploration and drilling, and then development and production. In East Africa, I think that is where we are. And then when we move from there, we'll come to the transportation. Okay, if you have oil, then we'll do the transportation, and through the pipeline we can track. In Kenya we tried to track, and it was a success story. And if you strike gas, then you have to develop the gas separation and processing plant, and then direct to transportation to the receiving end. I was in Tanzania, and I think they're doing a wonderful job. It's a case to learn from. If you have to export it, you have to do the liquefaction, and then transportation, and the receiving end, and the regasification on the other end. So down there, that is a downstream. This is my midstream, and then this is the downstream. Upstream, midstream, downstream. The red section deals with downstream. So in all these areas, finances are needed. How do we get that by finances? Who has the finance to finance all these projects? The monies are with the banks. And now, how do we have to package the project to be worth, a project that can be worth funding? Let's move to the next slide, please. Upstream financing options. But before maybe I move to the upstream financing options, it's also important to understand the equity participants in the industry, whereby we have the IOCs. In the IOCs, we have the super majors. We all know the ExxonMobil, the BP, the Shell, the Total. And then we have the majors, EDNOC. We have the majors, where we have the Talos and others. Other players in the industry, we have NOCs. We talk of the Saudi Aramco, the ADNOC. We also talk of the global traders. We talk of the private equity hedging funds, state-owned investment funding, including, for instance, the China Investment Corporation. We also have service companies, such as Schlumberger. We also have the shipping companies and also industrial manufacturers. These are the equity participants in the oil and gas industry. Now, upstream financing options. The upstream actually is viewed as the capital intensive. Equity investors typically require different sources of financing. The key financing options here include equity sources, IPOs, cash calls, third-party funding, and also there is also corporate loans, acquisition of financing, reserve-based lending. We have forward sales and inventory monetization, volumetric production payments, corporate debt, corporate financing, and project financing. Project financing it's actually not really applicable in Africa. It works perfectly well in Europe, because this is actually where we have the upstream facilities or projects financing itself with limited recourse from the promoters. So how do we package our project so that the project pays itself without necessarily having to struggle a lot, getting the letters of support, for example, from the government and all these other things. So I think that is an area we really need to focus in, and I think this is the area I think we need more capacities so that we get to understand on how best the project can fund itself. Let's move to the next. Specific risks in financing an upstream project includes the type of project and the nature of the transaction. When I'm talking of the type of the project, here we mean, for example, offshore and onshore projects, the financing components are different. We also talk of the identity and the existing liabilities associated with some of those projects. We also talk of the availability and the coverage of insurance companies. Do we have insurance companies who can, insure those projects? The availability, the individual institutional requirements, for example, capital reserves, allocations, and risk appetites. For example, country risk, environmental and social responsibility, sources of funds, and sanctions regimes. These are some of the things that you have to consider when going for upstream financing a project. The risk that you have to come up with a risk matrix. These are some of the things you have to consider. Next slide, please. Now, what are the sources of financing in midstream and downstream? In midstream, we have stakeholders can maximize their capital returns by meeting their equity funding obligations and in project financing through use of equity pledge loans, EPLCs, equity pledge financing, additional source of financing, initial public offering, private equity, corporate loans facilities, mezzanine debt. We have also acquisitional debt. There is Islamic debt, project bonds, hedging and refinancing of projects. Because actually this needs, I do not have the time to go into the details of each of these financing sources. Perhaps maybe we get some time, next time we can have a detailed look on the same. Next, please. Specific risks in financing a midstream project. We have construction risk. We don't know whether the contractors are going to complete the project. There is capacity risk. Don't know the contractor you're going to hire has the requisite capacity. There is also storage and transportation risk associated with the midstream projects. Political risk, I don't want to talk more on that. And also environmental risk. This is actually the key areas that we have to focus in. Next. And now, what are the specific risks in financing a downstream project? There is a risk associated with the feedstock supply risk, that is unlimited revenue streams for project life, and relevant financing tenor depends on security of supply of the raw oil and natural gas. The risk can be partially mitigated by aligning as far as possible the interests of the upstream participants with the eventual output product. There is also construction risk and construction and completion risk, pricing risk, offtake risk, and financials of LNG projects typically focuses on ensuring that long-term LNG SPAs, commonly on a take or pay basis, are in place for a minimum and annual contracted quantity. So these are some of the issues that the financing institutions they have to look into before perhaps maybe a project before they fund a project. Next, please. Yeah, I think I don't have any specific answer to any specific question. Before you even attempt to ask me a question, try to ask your neighbor, because I also don't know. Yeah, thank you. It's just an informative session. It's for us to make a decision. You see, we can't say that this is the best form maybe we can use to finance a project. It's upon us to make a choice. The choice is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Of course, it is very unfortunate that we could not get enough time to hear and also to ask questions, interact on these very important topics that we had this afternoon. Allow me to not to allow for any question. You bear with me. And I was warned by the organizers. I'm among of them, but when I stand here, I have to submit to be submissive. So, yeah, let me start by this last one. Financing facilities, mechanisms that are available to us in this sector of industry at all levels of the value chain, from the upstream to midstream to downstream, with all the types that are available. Of course, the presenter did not get time to go through all of them, and their associated risks, because each type of financing or facility or mechanism has got its own associated risk. And that's what normally people do. And the higher the risk, you know, the costly is the loan or the facility or the mechanism, and the lower the risk, that's when now we decided to go there. So that is a very important topic. The second one on farming partnerships and studies, feasibility studies. You saw all the scientific matters and issues that were presented to us, the LP1, the LP2, the LP something, and what are the recommendations they came up with for us to ensure that those studies are taken further, to ensure that some of the recommendations that we find to be very useful can be, you know, implemented and materialized. But this requires partnership. Then the presentation by the other gentleman, Boniface, this requires partnership, where people can build partnership, come up with some projects together, and also look at especially the regulatory framework that is needed to ensure that at each level of the value chain, you know, we ensure that those very good partnerships are well managed and they can take us to where we want to go. With the capacity building, that one, I don't want to talk about it because we all know for us to do all this, for us to know where to go and seek for financing, for us to carry out feasibility studies, we need people who are skilled, who have got ability, capacity, they can follow, and they can be part of the implementation process of whatever presentation, recommendations that we come out of, whatever findings that we come out of the studies that we have been, conducted. So we need that capacity. As to as to having a succession plan or a smooth transition from the old generation to the new generation, that is a must. Really, let me say it, that is a must. We are not throwing our old gurus somewhere But we need to keep them. They are old gurus, they have experience, and we have to facilitate their way of handing over that particular experience to young generation so that we can, achieve what we want to achieve. Thank you very much. I have talked much. They are giving me water. Allow me to stop here. Allow me to stop here and say, yeah, and take the water, of course. And I wish to thank the audience. I think you have been so faithful and lovely because from the beginning to the end of this, the presentations. But I want to promise, we are making a compendium of all the presentations. I am part of the organizing team, and we make sure that every other presentation that have been made here will be accessed by all the people who participate in this conference. So you will have it, and we make sure that we do it as quick as possible to ensure that the compendium is ready. Now, allow me to call all the presenters now here before. Sorry? Yeah? I have? Come on. So they gave me water, and they gave me 15 more minutes. So I think we can have 15 minutes. Let us be efficient now to see how can we use them, especially for the two components of presentation that we did not have a chance of having questions from the audience. We may start with the one of financing, and then he can give us, Peter can give us more elaborate explanations, and then we can move to the other one for partnerships before we close. And I would request those who have presented, of course we don't have enough chairs here. You may remain where you are seated, but you also have to remain because there is a token that the organizers have planned for you, and you need to go with it. Thank you very much. Do we have some questions? Okay, I can take 3 questions, very burning questions. Okay, there are 2 gentlemen here. Can you give the microphone? And let us be straight to the point.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'm Matiok Santino Kwe from South Sudan, Nalpet. Actually, really concerned and feel happy from presentation that was made by Okot regarding palming out. And most of you, or some of you, might be aware about Petroleum palming out in the Republic of South Sudan. And my question is about what could be the best practice and concern from the partners regarding EAPCE when one partner decides to palm out in the oil industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, delegate from South Sudan. There is another delegate. And the court, I hope you have noted down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Jacob from South Sudan as well. I'm directing my question to a colleague who presented on project financing. And I would like him to a bit explain what lesson can we learn in the region and what best finance option that you could recommend based on the fact that the upstream is basically built on the cash call. We have seen that in South Sudan because I come from there. But then the midstream and the downstream could also be built on finances that you can get from other sources. So what is the best lesson or the best recommendation that the colleague can recommend for countries such as South Sudan, even Uganda now, which is discovering and even Kenya, which is coming up in the nearest future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there is no any more questions, there is one here in front, and we will stop on that on those three. Thank you.
Mohammed Kalisa is my name. I'm the CEO Acacia Energies. My question is financial regarding capital call and revenue share. I was told because we own our resource, which is oil, the case of capital calling should not happen, where I have a partner who brings in the skills and the money, and for me I come in as the resource owner, being a Ugandan. Does that apply? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Okot, for the first question from South Sudan, and Peter for the other question on project financing from Dr. Jakot from South Sudan again. And then there's another question on lessons from the all types of financing mechanism facilities that you have presented, Mr. Peter, and what is the best option that you can recommend to the region, maybe Uganda, then the region overall. And the third question, the one of the gentleman here, on capital call and the energy resources sharing. I don't know whether I have captured it well. Thank you very much. Can we have quick feedback, please, Okot and Peter? Who comes first? Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, as I said earlier on, I really cannot recommend any financing option because it all depends on there are a number of issues that really determines. I was just giving you an informative and an overview of the available financing options in the market. And these financing options, they go hand in hand with the risks associated with such a project, and with that, with the country, the country level. So really, I can't say that maybe this financing option is better than the other. It was just an overview, and actually that is what happens anyway. So it's upon, you have to conduct your due diligence. You have to come up with your risk matrix very well. You have to analyze each and every risk associated with a project, at what level, downstream, upstream, midstream. So I really can't say that this is the best recommended financing option. However, I have some prayers towards project financing. If that one can be exploited well, then we can't have much issues, because when you make a decision to go and invest, it means you have some certainties on what you're investing in. If it's the reserves, then it means you understand your reservoir very well. You understand, your statistics was done very well. And then why can't that project finance itself? I think so that, because I think the government does not have luxuries of money to, to throw away. Anyway, so project financing, to me, if I were to be pressed to say, then I can recommend project financing. As far as on the issue of capital calls, we are not under an obligation to go for that. I was just giving you an overview on what happens in the industry. So don't go for that anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And there is a question from the audience. Maybe someone did not want to mention himself, can we hear about the role of ministries of finance in financing those kind of projects? And also, I will add on that one, before we go to Okot, that yesterday at the opening, they were talking about taking our destiny in our hands, and ensuring that the region work together to ensure that they promote the sector as one and as a block. And when Peter was talking, something came to my mind to say, if we look for financing from within the East African community, how are we going to do it? But I have an answer for that. We are trying to look at how we can facilitate syndication, financial syndication from within East African community. And the private sector, the banking sector, the financial institutions that we have in the region, so that they can pool, finances together, and why not come up with a better, a big amount that they can contribute to, financing such a high-profile project for the region. And that's what we call collective development, and also partner states or member countries can actually support that syndication and go for collective development. The funding of Uganda, if all the partner states of East Africa put money together and take shares in the refinery, that refinery can move on and we can have it. If I know Kenya has already subscribed to that, I know Tanzania will subscribe to that, all other partner states can do the same. And we can have financing from within the East African community. I think I wanted to add that, and this responds also to the question of what the ministries of finance can do. Okot? Yes. Is it Okot? Yeah, respond to the question of South Sudan and we close. Thank you.
Thank you. If I got the question from Southern Sudan well,
South Sudan.
Sorry, South Sudan.
There is no Southern Sudan, there is South Sudan.
Yeah. The question was the best practices where a partnership that has a participatory right or a license in the field, and one of the partners want to exit or farm out. Like I was about to make it, I think the best practice is to first of all envision that in your partnership when you're coming up. Because in this industry, the prime property is actually the right to participate and the license. And you realize that one cannot be split among either the partner that is staying and the one that is leaving. So you need to look at that from the beginning of your partnership when you're coming up, and you make provision for other items and other properties or other let's say other consideration for that exit. I think that is the best practice. You need to look at it prior to your engagement. And I thought I was about to make that.
Maybe if I can chip in from the legal point of view, I think I can't say that there is a best practice, because all these issues, they are articulated in a particular production sharing agreement, because it provides for the mechanisms of farming in and farming out. You see, and again, when you disagree in that process, of course there is arbitration, and actually we like it because, it happens. If it can't go smooth, then there are other mechanisms that can be employed. So the best way is actually to strengthen your legal instruments on that aspect, on that line. Because if you have robust legal instruments, and then you're good to go, I think.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause to our presenters. The audience ourselves, we can clap for ourselves. And can I call all the presenters to come here to the podium so that they can be given their token. And I would request our guru here in front of us to come and hand over the token to them. All the presenters here, please.
The oil. The Oil and Gas Moment, brought to you by Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating lasting value in Uganda's oil journey. The development and commercialization of Uganda's oil and gas resources is being undertaken through 4 flagship projects, which will bring in investment of $15 billion into the economy. The Kingfisher project will produce 40,000 barrels of crude oil per day at peak. The Tilenga project will produce 190,000 barrels of crude oil per day at peak. The 1,440
that person for me was working in Bank of Uganda. The man came and said, "Are you the oil expert engineer?" He said, "Yes." "What do you do?" He said, "I'm an economist or others who is responsible for getting fuel into the country." He said, "You know?" Then he said, told those people, "You go back. I want to find my people and send them for training." He got all the geologists who were there, plus other engineers, and sent them abroad to Aberdeen and everywhere else, even in America. Those people studied, and when they came back, these are the people who went back there to look at the data and everything else, and told them there is oil here. So they almost discovered the oil themselves. And that's what's important, to build capacity. And from that time, we have been sending Ugandans everywhere to study. When we got these companies, we gave them instruction that as local content, you should be sending yearly students abroad to your countries to study there. And you will find, you go there, you find some Ugandans speaking Chinese. There are those who speak English. And it is important. And we said, well, in the pursuit of this, when they come, you should give them positions of your, say, second in command, your follower, with the purpose of trying to get what you call, in future, we call knowledge transfer. And then we also established schools immediately. Makerere had to establish the faculty of petroleum. Then an institute was built to cater for skilling in this industry. It's cross-cutting. If you're a welder, you can go and weld there in the field, or you can even go to another place. This is how we have handled these ones. So these very people you are seeing called engineers here, they are all graduates from abroad, most of them, and we are also developing it. And other institutions also have been allowed to get some technical aspects towards the industry. That's what really we are doing. Then also you, others, you are talking about farm in, farm out. We have done that. First of all, how you do it, because somebody will say, "I'm going away." Then the other one says, "I'm taking over." But the resource is yours. How you do it, from the time you start engaging this company, you should be making budgets, and at the same time knowing what really they are brought in, so that the costings are kept. On the day they want to sell out, you say, "Okay, we know what you have injected here is this one. And now you say the difference is this one, because you want to get this. There is a tax here, which should go to the country. So they're one of the resources. And that's how we got the money. But another company became so obstinate and they did not like to pay. Say that they want to sell as if it was their property alone and go away. We said, "But we are here. We are the owners." So they decided to take us to court. These are international creatures. You cannot subject them to your local laws here. They bring a lot of money and you say the court must be, you refer to Uganda, you refer to Israel. No, they will say, "This is my money, you don't have. I want to be protected." Then we say international court, because you are international creatures. So we went there and we defeated them and we got our money. That's what we are doing. And that's how to go about it. About the list of money to use. And the person was telling you, if you want to invest, you can go here. He was just mentioning a catalog of who you should approach if you want, and how best you can do it, knowing all the risks. Even the other ones who want to give you the money, They want to know that you are not risky. And they look at the list, catalog of all those categories. Are you worth getting the money, or if you are not one, can you walk out? Thank you very much.
Webale Sebo, webale nnyo.
The Oil and Gas Moment, brought to you by Petroleum Authority of Uganda, creating